let's talk about the Hammer Head Karoo 3. Now, I was a huge fan of the Hammer Head Karoo 2. I'm a big fan of how consistent their development team has been. They've also been on the forefront when it comes to pushing the limit of what cycling computers can do. They were the first to market with things like their climber screen, and I was extremely excited when they made their climber screen available even without having a route pre-programmed in. Now, if you're not familiar with the climber screen, it's just a way to visualize the hill that you're on or an upcoming hill. But the Karoo 2 was in no way perfect. I actually complained about the battery life during my review. I complained about the mounting system, the missing smartphone application, and the USB-C cover port. Now, with the Hammer Head Karoo 3, we have better battery life, a smartphone application, more navigation features, and they've even fixed that terrible USB-C cover port. So, having used this device for well over 100 days, is the Hammer Head Karoo 3 perfect? Or can I find some more things to complain about here? So what are these little GPS coordinates on the box? Well, I looked it up. They appear to be referencing a bike route outside of Toulouse, France. I don't know. I would love to know more details about this bike route if you guys do happen to know any. But if you are going to pick up the Hammer Head Karoo 3, and Hammerhead is just calling this the Karoo, but it's the Karoo 3, it'll cost you $475. Now, I'm hopeful that we might see some holiday deals coming up in the very near future, but in the box, you'll get the cycling computer itself. You'll get a 31.8 millimeter handlebar compatible proprietary mounting system here. It's kind of designed to put your cycling computer out front in front of your handlebars. But what I love is that Hammerhead has also provided us with a quarter turn adapter, which works with any Garmin mounts. So I tend to use this little adapter more frequently just because I do tend to switch cycling computers a little bit more frequently than the average person here. There's also a nice little braided USB-C charging cable, and then there's also a safety lanyard, which I actually haven't been using over the past 100 days or so. I probably should, but it's just been in the box. But there's also some paperwork here. It's a quick start guide, and it comes in 9 different languages. Now, Hammerhead does sell a chest strap heart rate monitor for an extra $50, but it's not included in this package, and it's actually probably something that I would suggest you guys skip at this point, just because there are actually a ton of very affordable options in this little heart rate monitor market, the chest strap market. But there's also more full-featured options, so I would either go more full-featured or more affordable when it comes to chest straps. All right, let's start with hardware. The Hammerhead Karoo bike computer weighs 118 grams, and it measures 102.8 by 61 by 20 millimeters, and the handlebar mount weighs an additional 39 grams. The screen measures 3.2 inches diagonally, and this large, brighter screen is actually covered in Gorilla Glass, just in case it slips off your bike and happens to land on something hard. And it is a little bit more readable in direct sunlight compared to the Hammerhead Karoo 2. And if you're looking at these devices next to each other, you can tell that the Hammerhead Karoo 3 has slightly more rounded corners now. And the Hammerhead Karoo 3 now has a faster processor, and it has more storage. It has 64 gigs of internal storage, and that's largely going to be used for mapping in your historical ride data. And just for reference, the Karoo 2 had 32 gigs of storage. And the actual buttons are actually better in my opinion as well. They stick out a little bit more, and they have this little bit of texture to them. To me, they actually feel a little bit more responsive and easy to find as well. And I also found these buttons fairly easy to find when I was wearing gloves. And you know, just while we're talking about wearing gloves, there's a rain lock on this touchscreen. So if you do ride in the rain a lot, that should help. And then my gloves actually have this little tiny capacitive touch element to the tip of them. And I found using my gloves in rainy conditions on this touchscreen to be pretty functional, actually. Now, one of my biggest complaints about the Karoo 2 was the battery life of that device. And Hammerhead has actually improved it on the Karoo 3 a good bit. Here, check this out. So from the Karoo 2 to the Karoo 3, we're basically doubling the battery life here. And yes, I am very aware that I am oversimplifying things here. This is going to depend on a large number of factors, like how you have things set up in your settings, how much you're using the mapping and routing for that matter, and how many Bluetooth devices you have connected. But we're basically going from 7 hours to 15 hours, and I think that's a pretty solid jump. But I think we also need to look at the larger market of cycling computers when it comes to comparing battery life. Now, Wahoo and Garmin are more of the market leaders, I would say. There's also Brighton, which makes cycling computers that have a pretty long battery life as well. And then there's the Coros Dura, which is, I would say, something completely different entirely when it comes to battery life. But this does give us at least some idea of how this device compares to the rest of the market. But then in one of their very recent updates, Hammerhead has actually added a new battery saver mode that extends the battery life of this device up to over 30 hours, which sounds fantastic, or sounds fantastic at least until you use the thing. You see, the Karoo device is mostly saving battery life by turning off the screen here. And if you do go into settings, you can actually make changes to that. The battery mode saver here, for example, you can customize the amount of time for that screen to be awake. You can also slow down the processor speed, and you can make changes to the screen brightness. And you can even change what triggers the screen to wake up. Or you can sort of change things that'll trigger the screen to wake up. You see, you can trigger the screen to wake up when the device auto pauses, like when you're stopping your bike, when a lap is created, when you hit a climb, when the climber screen drawer opens, if you're actually coming up on a navigation turn, or you see a Strava segment, or you go off route. Or if your cycling radar actually detects a vehicle, the screen will turn on for that, or other ride alerts like your battery is low, or even phone notifications, which sounds pretty comprehensive. The weird thing is, first time you get out there and you're using this thing, you're gonna wonder, why the hell doesn't this thing wake up when you actually tap the screen with your fingers? And then you're gonna wonder again, why doesn't this thing wake up when you're trying to tap all of the buttons, all the normal buttons? Finally, it'll only reactivate the screen when you hit that tiny little power button that's on the bottom of the device. And then only then are you left with 35 seconds or whatever you set the timeout to be. And then it'll time out no matter what, no matter if you're in the middle of using the computer or whatever you're up to. Now, I have a feeling that Hammerhead is going to quickly see that that's not super usable. I have a feeling that they're going to pretty quickly make an update here. I don't have much of a doubt that they'll at least give us more options within the settings screen here for this battery saver mode. And the Hammerhead Karoo 3 has also improved its charging speed. You can charge up to about 30% of the full battery in about 30 minutes, or you can go the entire thing going from empty to 100% in about an hour and a half or so. So I think if you're like me and you very rarely go over 100 miles in a single ride, I don't think you're gonna have a problem using the Hammerhead Karoo 3. You should have battery life to spare when you go those distances. Okay, so Hammerhead has also made some significant improvements to navigation as well on this device. There's now a little turn-by-turn countdown, which I actually find very helpful. But the Karoo 3 has this new way to drop a pin when you're on Google Maps or you're on Apple Maps, and import that into the Hammerhead application from your smartphone, and it will actually automatically appear on your cycling computer map screen. And it is a super convenient way for navigating when you're out on the roads. as long as you're comfortable using your smartphone as well to navigate. I just find that like a very natural thing for me to do. If I am looking for something specific, I'm probably gonna grab my phone. But there's also a lot more detail being provided on each of these maps. And that's partially because the Karoo 3 has this big, massive, sharp touchscreen display. And it's partially because they're using Mapbox OpenStreetMap data, which can be super detailed here. The mapping for Europe has also been improved with more accurate elevation data, so we should get better details on that climbing feature. So you'll see stuff like upcoming climbs with that climber feature. You'll see details on the gradient, distance to the top, in the estimated time to the top. It's extremely detailed. I do wish that there was a way to actually edit what details you see in here. As far as I know, I don't personally see a way to edit that stuff yet. Let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong. Comment section is always like a fantastic resource for any of these videos if you guys want to check that out. And Hammerhead is actually constantly making updates to this device. And if you do have a paid Strava premium account, you can actually favorite a Strava segment that'll actually show up on your Karoo 3, and you'll see progress, both versus your personal record or the KOM on that particular segment, which is fun. But if we're speaking about third-party compatibility, the Hammer Head Karoo 3, or the Karoo 2 for that matter, they don't support Shimano's Di2 integration. And it's actually a huge issue, and I would say it's 100% on Shimano to allow us to use this. You see, SRAM is one of Shimano's biggest competitors, and so when SRAM bought Hammerhead, Shimano disallowed Di2 support for all of their Karoo cycling computers. Now, some people have side-loaded the, I think it's called the KI2 standalone app, which works for the Karoo 2, but it does not work for the Karoo 3. I actually remember people not upgrading their Karoo 2, just their basic software, because they didn't want to give up Di2 support, which was wild at the time, but that was 2 or 3 years ago now. And somehow there's no sign of Shimano changing their mind or realizing that this is it's not a reasonable way to do business or be competitive in this market. Okay, real quickly, I do want to compare this device to a few other devices that are on the market. Here's what this Karoo 3 looks like next to the latest, greatest Garmin Edge 1050. The 1050 is a very nice device, but at a little bit of a different price point here. $475 for the Karoo 3 versus $700 for the 1050. In some ways, I actually think that the Karoo 3 is easier to use for navigation than the Garmin Edge 1050. But I definitely would still give the edge to the 1050 when it comes to both mapping details, probably rerouting, and definitely compatibility issues. Then Garmin also has a slightly older 1040 Solar Edition, which has much larger battery life than the Karoo 3, but maybe a little less bright display, maybe a little bit slower operating system. It's just older at this point. But that device sells for either $600 for the non-solar or $750 for the solar edition. And then I do think that you'll actually find navigation to be a little bit better on the Hammer Head Karoo 3 when compared to the Wahoo Element series of devices. I love the simplicity of the Wahoo Element series, no doubt about that, but there's no touchscreen. Sometimes touchscreens are fantastic for just navigating and moving around maps, but Wahoo just has simple, easy to use buttons. And then as far as pricing goes, they're pretty comparable, I would say. $300 for the smaller Bolt version 2, about $400 for the larger Roam V2. And I should probably also mention that the Roam V2 has a longer battery life than the Karoo 3. Okay, so with all of these improvements to the Hammer Head Karoo 3, what do I wish were different? What can I find in here to complain about? Well, obviously battery life. It's better, no doubt about that, but it's still not going to be the best battery life option on the market. And then I think this happens to a lot of devices as they get into the marketplace and they're adding a ton of features week after week. I would say that the menu system in here has a lot of stuff going on, and it can be a little easy to get lost when looking for something specific to do, especially when you're looking for something specific to do and you're on a bike ride and you just want to do it quickly. Some of that's my own fault. I do switch from cycling computer brands, different computers very frequently, probably more frequently than most people. And so I do kind of have to hunt for things. And then I already mentioned the lack of Di2 support. That's a bit of a bummer, but this is also missing an alarm for eat and drink reminders. It's kind of a small feature, but it's pretty common on most modern cycling computers at this point. But then I would love to see some sort of volume control for the beeper on this device. I'm a huge fan of having a cycling radar on my bike. Getting these excruciatingly loud beeps throughout my ride has been pretty horrible. I turn it off all the time, especially if I'm riding with friends. It's a bit embarrassing. So, is this device right for you? Well, I think it depends on a couple of things. Probably depends on if you need a massive battery. Maybe, for example, that you're going on some sort of multi-day touring type of riding, or if you need Di2 support. Or again, if you're worried about the size and weight of this device. This device comes in at 118 grams, and I know a ton of you guys love cutting weight from your bike, in which case, maybe something like the Wahoo Element version 2, the Bolt, I think that one comes in at about 70 grams. For me personally, there's definitely a few other places for me to cut weight, but what do you guys think? Is the Hammer Head Karoo 3 something that you would consider picking up? Do any of you guys have this device? How is it holding up for you? I'm definitely happy to meet you guys down below this video in the comment section to continue this discussion. Comment section is right below the like button and the subscribe button down below here. But either way, fancy new cycling computer or no computer at all, I really do hope that you guys are getting out there, swimming, biking, running, rinsing, and repeating it all over again. And we will see you guys on the next one.